Wonderful. We're recording this as well. There we go. Wonderful. Thanks, Melissa. So Melissa Shipler is our Director of Client Success at Avid Ratings, and she's been with the company, I'm going to say just over 21 and a bit years now.
Almost 22 years. Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. So thanks so much for the housekeeping info, Missy, and also for getting things rolling here for us. This is being recorded, so we will share the recording for anyone who can't make the webinar or wants to share it with friends, family, whatever it might be. My name's Tim Bailey. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Avid Ratings. I've been with Avid, I guess, 15 years in a couple of days. So, but I've been in the housing industry my entire life. I'm 15 years old on site, through university. Sort of never left this industry. I love this industry. I'm passionate about it. It's been my career from selling new homes to being in operations for a multi-division builder. I'm located about an hour west of Toronto, so you might pick up a bit of a Canadian accent at times here. And for those of you on the webinar today, thanks for joining. Brief intro, if you're not familiar with Avid Ratings, I saw some client names floating in, but if you're not familiar with Avid Ratings, we are a customer experience technology company. We started back in 1992. So we have over 30 years of collecting customer experience research and data, and only for this industry. We've never left our roots. So let's get rolling with this webinar topic today of maximizing survey response rates and homeowner feedback. So I will get going. And, these days, any monkey can send a survey. And I'm not trying to knock all the wonderful self-serve technology that's out there. It's been created for capturing survey feedback throughout our world. However, because this technology is just so prolific, it's really created a lot of what we call survey fatigue in our world. Basically, any of us can now blast out a survey these days, and it's often done without a lot of thought or maybe even a lot of expertise. I definitely have received a ton of really crappy surveys in my life from probably really well-intentioned people that really probably just don't understand that at the end of the day, maximizing customer feedback to really generate actionable insights, not just some data, but actionable insights. It's a science. It's a mix actually of a science and a bit of art as well. So it seems that all the self-serve tools have turned everyone into a survey creator and a researcher. But at the end of the day, it's really important to remember that research analysis is a complicated science. There's quantitative research, qualitative research, statistics, big data analysis. We're now getting more and more into AI as well. And these are really specialized fields. There are a variety, as you're probably aware, college, university degree, diploma programs that really specialize in research, analysis, big data. And so I always like to remind folks that, collecting customer feedback in a form that will actually provide, for one, reliable data and then generate usable insights. It is definitely a science. And again, with a bit of art sprinkled into that as well. So stepping back from that, just to kind of the higher level 30,000-foot picture here, why does customer feedback even matter? Well, I started when I was putting this content together, that, there's literally probably hundreds of reasons out here, but here are just a few key ones that jumped out to me right away. One, it provides insight into our customer needs. So it helps our companies figure out, what our customers like, what they dislike about our products or maybe our services, helps us understand customer needs, their preferences, their pain points, where we're causing friction in processes. And that lets us tailor our offerings to, they call it the ICP, the ideal customer profile these days. But another one too is improvement opportunities. By listening to what our customers have to say, businesses can identify like weaknesses, again, in products or in services or even in people, and make changes. I call it the 3 Ps: your people, your products, and your processes, but be able to make changes to continually keep improving and at the end of the day, generate customer experience excellence. Another big one is product development. In our industry, especially, our product is such a paramount piece of the equation. Customer feedback is essential. We're getting into the product development, what innovations are consumers looking for. It provides ideas for new features, new functionality. That feedback can actually a lot of times even help us develop entirely new products to solve customer pain points or customer problems. The fourth one I listed there is competitive advantage. So, businesses that are actively seeking customer feedback are often gaining competitive advantages in their marketplaces. So, continuously improving based on customer input, I think a lot of times these are these leading businesses that can differentiate from competitors and really start to, meet the needs of these evolving target markets. I think, today's consumers have done a lot of presentations on it. Their preferences change quickly. They're tougher than ever before. So we need this feedback to really know how to position our brands, our companies for that competitive advantage. Another big one is brand reputation. If we can respond positively to customer feedback, we can really start to build up our brands, or at least if we're already a leader, maintain that brand reputation. Customers appreciate when they can, feel like their opinions were valued. And this often leads to things like traditional word of mouth referrals, recommendations. But, nowadays too, a big piece is getting those positive online reviews. And that really does go a long way for brand reputation and enhancing a strong brand image in the marketplace. And then last but not least, this idea of customer experience, enhance customer experience. If we can address customer feedback, we can demonstrate a commitment to our customers. This is a great way that we can enhance the overall customer experience. And why does CX or customer experience, even matter today? Well, there's so much information out there, but brands that deliver a great customer experience generally, do reap the benefits of some really positive business results. Some of these things, they get increased customer loyalty, hopefully even to the point of creating customer advocacy, kind of the ultimate customers. I like to call them the 3 Rs. We had the 3 Ps I mentioned already with people, products, and processes. But when we have CX, customer experience, really dialed in, we can really generate some great stuff with the 3 Rs, and that's the repeats, the referrals, and the reviews. So the repeats, who wouldn't want be back customers selling a house again and again and again to the same people? They keep coming back and will only buy from ABC Builder. The referrals, the more traditional or, word of mouth recommendations that we're always looking for. And then reviews, I mentioned already, positive online reviews are so paramount with today's consumers. Most of the inspiration and discovery starts online, upstream, digital. So today's, positive reviews are really becoming the word of mouth referrals versus word of mouth. Another one is higher customer lifetime value. And this one, I think this can be a tough one in our industry to even try to calculate or take a swing at. We have such a long cycle time. Someone buying their next home might have a whole different set of scenarios that doesn't allow them to buy from their previous builder. However, at the end of the day, again, those 3 Rs above there definitely tie out to improving the customer lifetime value, the CLV for our industry. A big one is reduced customer service costs. Before I joined Avid, I was working for a multi-division builder. You could see at point blank that when customers have a better experience, they're less likely to magnify issues and create a drain on our customer support resources and our finances in that part of the journey. And then a massive one too is increased revenue. The best brands in customer experience, they typically command a premium in the market. And this drives top line revenue dollars for the business. And at the end of the day, increasing their profits as well. If you've got this customer experience dialed in, you're going to be a more profitable organization. And just forgetting even about the customer service costs that we talked about a second ago, I'm thinking, look at the customer acquisition costs in our home building industry. Look at the cost to get a marketed prospect to shortlist a builder. Again, a lot of the inspiration and discovery stage is done online, upstream, digital. So to get them to shortlist a builder, and then think of even the larger number, what's the customer acquisition cost for every firm sale in home building? It's a massive expense on the P&L for every home builder that I know. And last but not least, brand differentiation or competitive advantage. Again, this idea of getting more repeat customers, attracting more customers through referrals, that can be a huge differentiator for a builder. And it can provide, again, this positive brand perception. And these days, that is hands down a big competitive advantage. Ultimately, happy customers are more likely to do business with that company again in the future. If not, if the scenario doesn't work out that way, they're definitely more, willing to recommend that business to friends or family, or maybe even post a positive online review about that builder. Or maybe at the end of the day, even defend that brand. That gets to be a big piece of it too. Again, or maybe all of those factors. It might be none of them are mutually exclusive. So to me, it just seems like, what a great business model all around. And in the business world today, focusing on customer experience, focusing on CX, it really can't be looked at as a nice to have business philosophy. It is a need to have business strategy. And that's because there is a return on investment. There's an ROI to CX. I'm guessing there's been thousands, maybe millions of studies done on the ROI of customer experience, but here are just a couple quick hits from some research studies that I found. Forrester Group businesses that prioritize customer experience, they grow their revenue 1.7 times faster than the businesses that don't. It's the customer-centric brands that report profits that are 60% higher than those that fail to focus on CX, according to the CX index. And the Gartner research shows 80% of organizations expect to compete mainly on customer experience. And we've been saying that for a while, that customer experience really has become this new competitive battleground in business today. So for those of you on the webinar today that are already leveraging a customer platform and customer surveys, there are so many factors that help to optimize survey feedback and the resulting data that we get from the systems. First off, a big one I think in our industry is we have to think of CX as not just a survey touch point. We have to think of it as a full, I call it an ecosystem. It's so important in our home building industry to view CX as this broader picture, this sort of, again, an ecosystem. To deliver a great customer experience in home building, we need to have data. We need to have feedback, not only from our customers, but we also need to have it from our employees, from our trade partners and suppliers as well, since they really are an extension of our human resources. And then beyond that, we have to think in terms of, I call it multi-touch, but customer experience is not a static metric. You've seen the journey maps probably. Customer experience maps like a roller coaster sometimes in home building. And so it's not just a point in time thing. We have to think of it as stitching together, data along that customer journey. I like to think of it like, the dashboard of my vehicle. So I want to know when I'm on a road trip, I want to be able to know that everything's performing like it's supposed to be. And, if the oil pressure gauge comes on, or the check engine light comes on, or the check tire pressure light, or whatever it might be, temperature gauge comes on, I want to get that alert on screen right away. And why is that? It's because then I can take action before it's too late, before I cause, any real damage. And I think, the customer experience is the same way. We want these, I call them early tripwire warnings, but we want to be able to monitor the experience along the journey to make sure it stays on the rails. Another big one too is omni-channel. And consumers today, all of us, we are hyper connected. So we need to meet people where they are. And that means we need to be asking for their feedback by leveraging a variety of different channels. We can't just think in sort of a one channel approach to reach today's customers, which then leads right into this idea of being mobile optimized. At Avid, we're seeing that about 70% of our survey responses are coming in via mobile these days. So, if mobile is how we all have devices in our hands all the time. So we've got 70% of survey responses coming in via mobile. If the user experience isn't optimized for mobile devices, there is a good chance that these folks are just going to drop off. And on that note, it gets into, again, texting and SMS. I still remember the old, and Melissa would as well, the old paper mailed surveys with postage paid business reply envelopes. But now we're seeing about 20% of our survey responses are coming back as a result of the text or the SMS survey invitations that we send out. And there's things like dynamic branching, quick touch, both, dynamic branching and quick touch surveys. It just makes that home buyer, homeowner user experience more personalized and just easier. And, we know that these days, I think the saying I heard at a conference a few weeks back was ease and convenience are the competitive advantage these days. So anything we can do to make the journey easier, any interactions easier and more convenient, that becomes a competitive advantage for the brands. And those are, again, just a few high-level factors that really, do make a difference in optimizing customer feedback. But now I want to take some time to really lean into this idea of survey response rates. And more importantly, the factors that can impact these survey response rates. There are numerous factors, but today I want to focus in on what I think are I created the top 5 list. Plus, I wanted to let you in on a little bonus factor that I think is so often missed when it comes to feedback. So the top factors that I want to really lean into today are, primary stakeholder objectives, survey design, survey methodology, the why, the respondent. And again, as I mentioned, I've got a little hidden bonus factor that I'm going to share with you today. So let's dig into some of these right now. So first up, we have the primary stakeholder objectives. What is the reason a business is doing this in the first place, collecting any sort of feedback? Again, there are more points that I could probably list here, but some of the bullet points that jumped out that I've seen or heard the most. One is for business improvement. Whether that be benchmarking against industry average or NPS, Net Promoter Score comparisons, digging in for root cause analysis. Another big one is compensation or employee incentive programs. We have a lot of clients that have customer satisfaction as factors in their scorecard metrics, whether that's for employee incentive programs or executive incentive programs. Some even use this for trade management programs. But this is again a big area. We could actually probably do an entire webinar alone just on structuring an effective incentive program. Big one as well, marketing and brand reputation. And again, I've talked a bit about today's digital consumers. We are all digital consumers. We start online with almost everything these days. And so this area has become huge. This idea of marketing and brand reputation, brand promotion, reputation management, all these terms that we're hearing these days, it's become such an important piece of the puzzle. And here as well, we have multiple webinars that we could talk about just on that one bullet point, just on that topic as well. And then a big one too is just genuine caring. There are some companies out there that really just want to gather feedback to make sure that their customers are feeling cared about, feeling heard during their customer journey. And again, none of these bullet points on screen are mutually exclusive. I would say, a lot of clients that we work with probably zone in on all of them. So, for example, if an employee's compensation factor relies on a customer satisfaction component, there is a higher likelihood that customers were going to hear about that survey more frequently. It leads to them often more completions of the survey. But we're going to, get down into that rabbit hole. It's called survey awareness versus survey pressure. So we're going to, again, sort of unpack that one a little bit deeper as we go along here today. So stay tuned. Don't change the channel. So one of the big factors as well in generating great response rates is survey design. And again, this is a mix of art and science. This is where this design elements, this engineering elements really come into play. First up, though, is just ease of taking a survey. And again, we mentioned the idea of being mobile optimized with 70% of our survey responses coming in via mobile. But I did want to sort of reiterate that again. It's so important. We are all on our devices all the time. But there are a lot of other areas as well that can just make it so much easier for a customer to take a survey and provide useful feedback. Things like survey branching. So it only opens up the most relevant questions to them. Even little things like easy to understand survey scales and just so much more. A big one though too is personalization. And this is so big because as a consumer today, we reward personalization. We reward it with our attention, with engagement. And I think as consumers too, we're quickly shifting. We expect personalization, a personalized experience for nearly everything in our world. So survey invitations and the survey itself needs to be personalized to the respondent. It needs to create, I would say, familiarity as well. In our case, we co-brand surveys with our builder clients. So the home buyers, the homeowners see that builder's familiar name and logo front and center. But other things, another big one is multi-language capabilities. That can go a long way when it comes to personalization. According to the US Census Bureau, almost 22% of people in the US speak a language other than English at home. Almost 22%. People in the US, when I was looking through some of these stats, people in the US communicate in more than 350 languages. So communicating in the language of a customer, that can go a long way to create a personalized experience and really drive up response rates. Another one I have up here is survey invitation wording. So the invite that actually goes out. This is, again, is something we are constantly A/B testing since consumers are constantly changing. But one key objective in the survey invitation is what I call the relevance of the ask. So what is the reason? Why are you bugging me? Why are you texting me or emailing me? What is the reason that a company wants the feedback, and how is that information going to be used? And that leads right into the next point too, the survey question wording. So this really means, using verbiage that's easy to understand, not a bunch of technical jargon. Our industry is great with acronyms. We shouldn't be using those like PDI or PDO, in a survey, in the verbiage at least. We got to be, really simple and straightforward, and also using terms that are familiar with the experience that respondent has just gone through with your company. So if they heard the word sales associate during their journey, then that's the title that needs to be called out in a survey and not sales rep. If they heard the word personal builder during their process, then that's again the title that's got to be called out in a survey and not construction manager or site supervisor. And then the next bullet point is survey flow and survey logic. And this one is really gets into the art and the science, a bit of engineering, a bit of psychology. There's little psychological tricks like leading off with survey questions that are about the respondent first versus, about the company. You can start off with, I want your feedback, and later you're going to ask the marketing questions, but basically trying to warm them up, build the relationship early in surveys instead of being perceived as just trying to take or just trying to get information right out of the gate from the respondent. Another one too is just the use of qualitative or open-ended questions. We all know how valuable the qualitative comments are in any form of feedback that we get, but we really do have to find that it's a delicate balance. We got to really, thread the needle and not try to dip into the well too deep or too often, because that just ends up creating fatigue and with the respondents, and they just kind of exit out. And then I wanted to touch on survey length as well. This one can be such a wild card, because it tends to vary based on the engagement of the respondent. So in the home building industry, thankfully, people are typically making the largest investment of their lives. So they tend to be really engaged, especially if you compare it to like lower engagement experiences like a hotel stay or a restaurant experience or rental car experience or bank interaction. So, but it's still a matter of finding that right balance with the length of the survey, and also where the customer is at in their journey. How emotionally engaged and how invested are they at that touch point along their journey? What research has found is that 45% of people are willing to spend about 5 minutes, up to about 5 minutes on a feedback survey. About 33% say they'd stay on and spend up to 10 minutes. So I think the key is while we have their attention, we really need to be swift, thought out, engineered, and tactical. Now, the third factor I wanted to touch on that impacts survey response rates is actual survey methodology. And I'm not going to go too deep into this area because a lot of this actually gets into the proprietary zone for companies like Avid, kind of our secret sauce, I guess you could say. But at a high level, we do see response rates that are impacted from some real key factors. One is, like I mentioned it a little bit before, multimodal. Some survey invitations that go out through different channels. Again, this world of omni-channel communication that we live in today. To be effective, we've got to use multimodal communication. So email, text, or SMS, maybe voicemail dropping. Again, the era of the antiquated methods like phone surveys or paper mailed surveys, it seems to finally have sunsetted for us, at least in the research world. What we're seeing now, according to the most recent data, about 91% of people now prefer to complete a feedback survey online versus other methods. There's also things in the methodology like dynamic email content. So, emails that change depending on who receives the message. Survey campaign design, that's a big one as well. So, collecting customer feedback is not a once and done email, hope for the best. It really requires an effective survey campaign to generate response rates. And so to do that, that means, multiple attempts using varying modes, varying channels, of course. And then, some gentle nudges, little gentle nudges, just to inspire that recipient to respond, just share their experience, spend a few minutes, take the survey. Another big factor in methodology is timing. And what I'm referring to here is really the timeliness relative to the customer journey stage. Is the experience still fresh in their mind at that point? That's going to make such a difference. And then, another huge one these days is trust and privacy. So this one's a big one. Recipients are going to want to know things like How are you going to use my information? Why is it being collected? And that stuff's got to be kind of front and center before they'll respond. But then even deeper, kind of behind the curtain, behind the scenes, there's all the pieces like unsubscribe policies, complaint rate monitoring, all of that stuff that's often changing frequently enough, whether it's through legislation in different areas or through the email providers like Google and Yahoo and their spam or deliverability policies. So just a lot of moving parts there. But needless to say, at the end of the day, you can design the best survey and it won't stand much of a chance of getting a response if the methodology of doing the surveying isn't optimized. And another big factor is, I call it the why. And I have it as the fourth point. And I realized when I was putting this together, it's like, Simon Sinek wrote that book. You maybe have read it, called Start With Why. Did a TED talk on it. And I guess this, he said start with why, and I'm point four with the why. I should have probably been the first factor here and not my fourth. But when I put this together, this really does kind of put the bow on things here that we've talked about so far. I've touched on some of the other points, but I am a firm believer that if a respondent truly, truly, truly understands the why when it comes to filling out the survey, they're just going to be that much more likely to complete it. So what that means to me is we really need to craft compelling stories. We need to be great storytellers and really have our scripting tight with our teams in this area. Some of the stuff is, again, there's multiple bullet points. I picked sort of my top three list here. Out of the gate, use of the feedback. We need to be transparent. How's this feedback going to be used? Who's going to see it? Why do you want it from them? And again, this often means clarifying, being very transparent with the trust and privacy piece, how the data be used, the data privacy security protocols and policies. Just again, reassure the respondent that their information and their feedback is going to be held safe. But then a big piece is altruism as well. And this is a human psychological thing, but how will the customer's feedback improve things for other folks? So when you look at research in psychology, it suggests that as humans, we basically behave altruistically because it's emotionally rewarding for us. It makes us feel better about ourselves. It makes us feel like good people. But human altruism is typically also because of empathy and concern for the welfare of others. So part of this tightly scripted story that we need to craft needs to be about how a respondent's feedback will be used for, call it continual improvement, to help future home buyers. That's really a compelling factor when it comes to maximizing survey response rates. And then last but not least on the why part is the WIFM, the what's in it for me. And of course, we are still humans. And at the end of the day, it's not all about being altruistic. At the end of the day, a respondent's going to want to know, how's this feedback going to be used to improve things for them as a customer as well, not just future buyers. And I think this really points to the importance of having multiple touch points for feedback. So that way a respondent feels like, hey, I gave feedback now, and that feedback still has some sort of an ability or an opportunity to improve my own customer journey or my own customer experience with this company, with this home builder. And likely the biggest wild card of all when it comes to maximizing survey response rates is the actual respondent. And so there are so many aspects that come into play when it comes to the respondent that it was really tough. I could have put slides after slides here. I just want to get it down to, again, my top three. And what I see as sort of the top three with the respondents is one, motivation. So part of this is about, I would say, customers' relationship with the company. No buyer wants to think they made a mistake, that they made a bad decision in their purchase. And so often they feel like they do have a kind of a vested interest in providing feedback to help a company improve, not just for themselves, but for others down the road as well. And then there's also survey incentives, another little bit of motivation. So having a bit of an incentive in place for filling out the survey never hurts. But I do have to say this factor really does require a lot of testing. We do a lot of A/B testing behind the scenes on this to really get it right and find the optimal balance when it comes to incentivization for survey responses. A big piece that I alluded to this a little bit with the multi-language survey idea, but demographics. In North America, we are such an interesting, diverse demographic, ethnographic, psychographic makeup So, language, culture, age, education, all of these factors have a huge impact on survey response rates. And then last but not least is awareness. My top three list, this is a big one. This one, I'm actually going to, unpack this one a little bit further here because this concept of creating survey awareness, yet not turning customers off by creating survey pressure. So again, I want to spend a couple slides here to just unpack this a little bit more in detail. And at the outset, what I was thinking about is that, customer feedback really is about embracing continual improvement. This is what we're all about in business today, continual improvement. We want to get better every day. Theory of marginal gains. Do something a little bit better every day. And when it comes to continual improvement, so much of it starts by focusing on the right objectives. Or, more importantly, not chasing scores. And I'm a firm believer, customer satisfaction needs to be top of mind for every business these days. It's not an option, and it's got to be top of mind for every employee in every business. But we also have to be focused on the right objectives, that we're not, chasing after the wrong dangling carrot when it comes to that objective right now. Because we can often be perceived, in a zone that we call survey pressure, or maybe even called survey influence, if we get a little bit too aggressive with trying to get feedback. So what we see is one of the biggest factors that maximize response rates for us is when a client is just great at creating survey awareness with their home buyers. Again, not too aggressive to tip into the danger zone, creating survey pressure or survey influence, but that they do a great job creating survey awareness. But before we even get into that, I just want to dispel a couple quick myths. We hear them all the time. I just thought I'm putting them on screen. First one, only unhappy folks fill out surveys. I hear that all the time. 15 years with Avid, I've heard that tons. What we actually have found, though, in 30 plus years of customer experience research, it's our highest scoring, highest performing builders typically have the higher response rates. So the flip side of that, if a builder is struggling with their customer experience performance, it seems like more of their home buyers are disengaged and less interested in taking the time to fill out a survey to provide feedback. So our data hands down shows happy customers are just as eager to provide feedback as unhappy customers. But it does take survey awareness. Having said that, if we look at a timeline of surveys coming in, from the start of a campaign, we do often see that, first surveys in might be coming from a more disproportionate bunch of unhappies. They just want to vent it out. But again, we do multiple nudges along the way. And by the time you've sent out additional survey invitations to homeowners during the campaign, we eventually do get that solid cross section of customers that do respond. We've always said it's like stirring hot sauce into the chili. You have to keep stirring it to get that even blend or that even cross section to respond. And so when you actually plot out customer satisfaction scoring, what you will typically see is an inverse bell curve. It looks like this. And this is just not our findings. This is research I put on screen here from a company called Bazaar Voice. And you may not have heard of them. They are a large white label provider of online reviews. They are the machine that runs in behind the big box websites like a Walmart or a Home Depot. And what they have found is that customer reviews, again, typically follow this inverse bell curve, or maybe it's called a J curve if you read some of the research. I'm Canadian, I like to call it a hockey stick. But this idea that it follows this different, interesting shape. And so, here the horizontal axis that Bazaar Voice uses is a 5-star scale. And you do see, they've got that little tip up on the ones. You do get some folks that give you that low rating. Generally, it dips down. Not as many give sort of that 2 on a 5-star scale. And then it starts marching up. Then you start to see the ratings start ramping up to form, again, that J curve or hockey stick on the graph. And, this is, again, what we see in our data. Bazaar Voice has seen it in their review data as well. Yelp has done research and had similar findings. So I just wanted to dispel the myth about only the unhappies fill out surveys. And then there's another common myth that we often run into as well in the research world. And this is this idea that, the more I bring up the survey to customers, the higher the ratings are going to be that they give me. And again, this is a dance. This is that dance between survey awareness and survey pressure. And again, this is the art and the science that I was talking about, the storytelling and scripting. Survey awareness, hands down, is such an important strategy for maximizing response rates. And more importantly, to help your customers understand, again, the why of your ask. like we were talking about earlier, but things like, why is a builder using an independent third party, research company like an Avid Ratings, to help them measure and monitor customer experience? Why is it important for a customer to provide that honest, that genuine, that whether good or bad feedback? Survey awareness itself is all about helping your homeowners understand the why. Why should they care, spend a few minutes of their time? And it's not about, again, just pressuring them to respond only favorably, only positively to the survey questions. There's often that notion out there that if a customer is pressured a bit, they will likely fill out the survey and provide a positive response. But, all I can say is that in many cases, we see the opposite happens. And I put a quote on screen. I heard it myself in an interaction once upon a time. But if you can't give us perfect scores on the survey, please give me a call. It's important to my bonus. That's that survey pressure tipping point there. What did that conversation just become about? Who did it become about? Definitely not the customer. So again, our team at Avid's always willing and able to help clients to craft compelling survey awareness scripts and practices, because we know, even if a pressured customer does end up submitting a positive survey in this one instant, we live in such a transparent and wired world these days that that one positive survey response, it's just no guarantee that that same customer won't take to Google or Yelp or Facebook or blogs and tell a completely different story about your brand. So just be cautious, again, how you create survey awareness for your customer feedback program. Make sure it doesn't tip into that realm of survey pressure or survey influence. In the CX or research world, that's often called subversion, or basically trying to game the system, because at the end of the day, it's too high a risk. It could really create a lot of harm and tarnish on the customer experience. And I wanted to show, this is some data we plotted quite a while back, but it's still so relevant today on this idea of the sweet spots between survey awareness and then where it tips into this survey influence area. This is on the vertical axis, the would recommend in my builder score that we plotted, and you can quickly see, the answer set options that we use. We have a question on the survey that says, to what degree were you pressured to provide a positive response on the survey? And the answer set across the scale is things like felt a lot of pressure or completely offended, through to never mention the survey. And now this question's in place. It's to help our builders make sure that there isn't any survey pressure happening out in the field with their home buyers. We know no builder wants to be paying out incentive programs and that on a system that might be getting gamed a little bit. But the survey is also there to help our clients and even us see if there's even survey awareness at all happening. Because if we see a large number of survey responses come in that answered nobody ever mentioned the survey, then we want to check in with our client to see if they can pitch in just a little bit more when it comes to creating survey awareness. Because ultimately, an independent third party like Avid, we don't have the relationship with the home buyers, so that's where we really rely on this partnership with a client, so they know when they get that survey hitting their text or SMS or email or their inbox, they're like, oh, that's from my builder, I got to fill that out. They know, again, the why. Now back to on screen here though too, this is plotted from our data. You can see there is that sweet spot. So you can do a lot to create survey awareness and not impact the would recommend score. But once that survey awareness starts to feel like it's pressure on the customer, once they think they're supposed to be pressuring for a positive response or feeling pressure to provide a positive response, you can see the would recommend score quickly drops off. Your customer loyalty quickly falls off. So it shows that you can create a lot of survey awareness to help drive up response rates. But once home buyers feel like you're pressuring them to respond only positively, then your customer satisfaction is going to take a hit. And I mentioned this bonus factor, and just there's 5 points we covered, but this bonus factor, if you really want to maximize survey response rates, homeowner feedback, improve the customer experience, the bonus factor is closing the loop on customer feedback. And it sounds like such a simple factor, but it really does work to increase response rates, enhance the customer experience. But unfortunately, most of the time it gets overlooked. And yet there is no better way to deepen a customer relationship than to follow up with these respondents and thank them for the feedback and demonstrate that you actually read it and reviewed all of it. If that respondent feels like their feedback actually mattered, they're going to be more likely to complete future surveys, to interact with you more, provide more feedback. Even better, if you can share any sort of stories of how their feedback is going to help you improve your company, or some quick wins that you're going to implement as a result. That just hands down in spades, it solves the why part again. So I took a look at a client that gets super high response rates. And I mean, like, we're talking 80% response rates on some key survey touch points. And, beyond their actual prescribed meetings with customers along the journey, they actually do weekly phone calls with every customer. Their sales rep and personal builder get together and call every customer once a week. And they're pretty much successful at reaching 80% of those customers every week. They ask their customers if they have any immediate issues they want to discuss. They want to deal with the tough stuff up front if there is anything. That gives them an opportunity as well to remind the customers to, fill out the survey, provide honest, genuine feedback. It gives them a chance to thank them for any survey feedback that might have come in. And they really they look at this as relationship building time with their customers. Ironically, they even go so far as encouraging customers to come out to do site visits. Just come out and visit your house under construction. They, with proper notice, proper safety precautions, but such a different thought process about building the relationship. And at some point along the journey, these customer interactions develop into a relationship instead of a transaction. That's their goal. And then they said, now we're not, now it's like we're working with friends. It's like we're working with family. And then asking for feedback is just that much easier because they now have earned the home buyer's trust, the home buyer's respect. Another one of our clients that gets amazing response rates, had a chance to chat with them as well. Same thing, such a relationship focus with their customers. They let their customers know that every rating, every comment, and every survey that gets sent in is read by their entire team, from front lines to their executive team. Then they give a couple examples how that customer feedback has helped them improve. They set up automated reminders pre and post closing to, again, remind customers to share their feedback when they get the survey. They gently remind customers as well in key in-person touch points. They do a great job. They actually monitor their non-respondent list and also then gently nudge those folks as well to provide feedback. They just view all of this as another opportunity to have a touch point with the customer. And they have found, again, this is really key in building that relationship with the customers. Just this idea of being, sincere, being transparent, being authentic. And then again, most importantly, it's closing again that loop on the feedback. And there is one other part about closing the loop I wanted to quick touch on, and that is, it's not just with your customers. We need to close the loop with our own team members as well. And in our industry, that includes employees and trades and suppliers. Sharing that feedback allows everybody to learn and to grow from it. And it's such a key ingredient in business improvement, continuous improvement. So keeping the data, keeping the comments, keeping the metrics locked down just for a precious few to see, it's never the way to rally your troops, rally, the teams around striving for that customer experience excellence. So we're blasting through a lot of stuff. I wanted to keep this kind of short and punchy, but we've covered a lot in a short time. I just wanted to, again, recap the 5 factors that really do impact survey response rates: primary stakeholder objectives, survey design, methodology, the why, the Simon Sinek thing, the respondent, such a big piece, again, with this idea of creating survey awareness. And then that bonus factor, never forget to close the loop. You've got this good feedback, close the loop on that feedback. But ultimately, what we really need to do at the end of the day is mind the store and not the score. A CEO from a top 20 builder mentioned this quote in a meeting I had with him a couple years ago, and it still resonates to me today. If we take care of our businesses, of our coworkers, our trades, our suppliers, our customers, then a positive customer experience, it's going to be the outcome. They often refer to customer satisfaction, customer experience as lag measures or lagging indicators. I really prefer to think of them as outcome metrics because they require our inputs. For a great customer experience, we're only going to get out what we put in. And that, I mean that in terms of our focus, of our efforts, of our resources. We truly want to focus on and maximize survey response rates, homeowner feedback, and continually improve our businesses. The most important factor of all is that we do take time to mind the store. So I think I ran right to the 45. If there's any questions that came into the Q&A pod, we can take a few minutes. If people do have to drop, I did go a little long here, but if there are any questions, we can take them now. I think I see
All right,
some.
we've got one question here, Tim. Can you explain the scoring on the pressure for positive response? For example, my builder is currently scoring 97.6 and the average industry is 98.3.
For sure. That's a great, I mean, there's always going to be some drifting up and down, but the higher the score on that question, the better. That's when we want to see really high. It means the customers aren't feeling pressured for a positive response.
Nice question.
I think that's all we got rolling in for now.
Can you explain how you measure the response on incentives?
Yeah, that's done by A/B testing. So we try different incentives with different sample groups. So again, a little bit behind the curtain and special sauce stuff here, but we try different incentive invitations on our survey invitations, different incentives, and then A/B tests. So similar populations, get to test A versus test B and see which one comes back with the better results. So it's sort of a continual thing that we're always doing at Avid.
Do you have any stats on how many of the Avid builders are using the SMS feature?
Oh, I would defer to you, Melissa, on that one. What's your best guess, Melissa?
My best guess would probably be about 30% are utilizing it today. It still hasn't been adopted by 100% of our clients yet. So a lot of things have to be in place before an SMS feature can be deployed. One of the biggest ones is making sure that you have explicit consent from your home buyers to be able to text them. And usually that's the biggest hurdle. If you have that language already in your contracts, then turning on the SMS feature is as simple as contacting your CSM.
For sure. I just think I mean, I get so many survey invitations on my phone. That's just where I would look before I'm actually into my personal emails. So I think it's such a great mode to add to the repertoire, put it in the quiver to get higher response rates.
Yeah. Tim, you mentioned that 33% of customers are willing to spend 10 minutes to complete a survey. How long do you recommend a feedback follow-up call take?
I would say that would depend on the relationship with the customer. I think if you've got a good relationship with a customer, it'd probably be similar. People would gladly spend 5 to 10 minutes. This is the most important purchase of their life, the largest investment of their life. So they would definitely take 5 to 10 minutes to chat with somebody. Again, the client that we have that's doing weekly touch points, they can keep them pretty short and punchy because they're doing it every week with the clients. But it's going to depend on the relationship. As the relationship gets bigger and bigger, tighter and tighter, those conversations again become almost like friends and family. It's not just about the problem at hand. It also is like, how was your son's soccer game last night? How was your weekend away camp? Whatever it might be. It just becomes a relationship call, and those can eke out a little bit longer.
How do you recommend or suggest that builders battle respondents who say they aren't hearing about the survey, but we know that they are? We know that we're mentioning the survey to them.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, some people use that as just the excuse to not want to fill it out. And we're always going to miss a few of those in the way. But yeah, I think, monitoring non-respondent lists, again, doing those pulses out to those folks to see, there'll be some that'll drop through the cracks that just will use the excuse that, oh, I never got it. But again, multimodal helps as well. So you never got the email, you never got the voicemail drop, and you never got the text. Seems a little suspicious. So I think that's where the multimodal communication really comes in, though.
Yeah. The Avid Awards were recently released. Why do we use the star rating for the awards rather than the actual numerical scores for the whole survey? So I think maybe THPE. Why do we use the single question instead of the overall?
A lot of that really became a decision to make it easier for our clients to see how they're tracking throughout the year. We did some correlation analysis on, we call it the THB, the Total Home Buyer Experience Score, and that is an overall satisfaction measure that sort of, all the metadata goes up and unfolds into that. It did make it much more complicated, the factor we used to use before. So after doing some correlation analysis on the THBE, it tracks empirically so tight to the overall star rating question that it just makes it much simpler to say, if we use the overall star rating, it's very transparent. Our clients can see it. They can see how they're tracking. And we also know it does correlate super strongly to the overall satisfaction or the THB metric as well.
Great questions here.
That's awesome. Did we catch them all? Again, I should say too, if there's any questions that came up and you don't want to throw them in the Q&A here, feel free to reach out to Melissa or myself or any of our team. I did put my contact info, Melissa's contact info up there as well on screen. So we are only ever a call or a click away if you have any additional questions.
We got one more question here, Tim. Are the
Yeah, sure.
builders who adopted the SMS surveys receiving higher response rates from when they were only using email?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that makes the difference. It's not the ace in a hole hands down winner. It all helps. So again, it's just one more arrow in the quiver here to try and keep getting more and more response rates in. I would love to see all of our clients using it. We're
Any
working.
upcoming technology or enhancements on the surveys you can share?
Oh, we're working on so many things right now. There's a lot actually in the platform that we're working on right now. Some new features. We use a 1 month sprint, so we're an agile company that uses Sprint and Scrum. So we do 1 month sprints for our product development team, and so monthly we're adding new features, new innovations. So just stay tuned. There's a new builder summary report that's in the platform now as well. So a lot of what we're doing, I mean, we're building some new functionality into the survey world as well, but definitely then also into the platform. So that's just on a monthly schedule of new releases all the time.
For consent of SMS, do you recommend we embed it in their agreement of purchase and sale? Short
Definitely.
answer is yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, most clients that we talk to that aren't they've been texting the homeowners anyway, but they have never got it in their APS in their agreement of purchase and sales to get that consent. But they've been doing it. The site soups have been texting, the sales reps have been texting, and then they're like, if they want to turn on for the survey world, like that's kind of when it's like, oh boy, we got to update our agreements of purchase and sale. But yeah, get it in there, then you've got the coverage. For every text communication, not just for surveying, but for your staff to be able to text the customer as well.
Here's an interesting question. Is there a way to add a small video to teach owners on how to fill out the survey? So homeowners, how to fill out the survey. Uh, this this question came from, I have many that have said they get confused on how to complete the survey.
We can take that back to the team. I think one of the challenges that we run into is what is allowed through the email and spam filters these days is getting so stringent. So Google, Yahoo, those types, to try and email a video or message a video out with a link to a survey, it makes it really challenging to get through these spam filters. So that's a dance that we always have to navigate. We really have to work all the time to make sure our survey invitations are, clean and make it through for first priority. But I love the idea. We can take it back to the dev team as well.
Yeah.
Did we catch them all? I think that was awesome. I love the questions
Uh,
rolling in.
we've got a suggestion, I think, playing off of that. Maybe a video could be available on the Avid website.
Yes,
Just on,
that's a great idea. I love that.
yes.
And then we can, yeah, like it.
Let's see. We've got one more. Good response to that. The survey starts with number 10 is good and goes down to number 1 is bad. And every few months, I have a purchaser filling it out backwards. So, having that clarification, just something simple maybe to explain how the rating scales work.
Yeah. I love that. We do. Yeah, we feel that pain. We hear that once in a while our customer totally reverse the scales. We call that an outlier. So we can work to remedy that, but it is a bit of a hassle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone staying on a little longer. Sorry we went over, but I love the questions. That's what this is all about. Again, just sharing content, sharing feedback with each other here as a group as well. Did we catch them all now, Melissa?
We've got looks like one more question. The subject line for the emails. The subject line is always going to have your builder name in there, dash online survey, always. And does the never mentioned survey question affect the pressure for positive response? It is actually scored as a 100, or a perfect answer. Never mention the survey and um, mention the survey and no pressure are treated equally. So it does affect that overall score. What we would want to focus in on is the never mentioned survey percentage, and looking to see how we can improve that, and making sure that our home buyers connect the dots between that survey that they're going to be getting and that survey awareness. Last question here. How long should we wait post-transaction to capture the homeowner experience so that it's top of mind? What is the sweet spot?
Oh boy, that is again a little bit unique for every builder and their cycle time. I like to think that if somebody, we will, like with our move-in survey, we will still reach back and collect some high-level feedback on the sales process and the design decor process and things like that. But if you can do things right out, within the month after. So if you want to do a design center survey, get it in their inboxes and on their phones, within the month after they've had that experience, is going to make such a difference. You just, again, the more, what I like to think of is, when would you want the tripwire warning if something went sideways? You want that sooner than later. I want my check engine light to come on as quick as I can, pull over so I don't do any more damage. So I would say, in that month range with possible, but then, bigger surveys like a move in or a year end, you can reach back a little longer on those touch points, but shorter, pulse surveys or shorter, touch points like that after sales, after design decor, after maybe a frame walkthrough. Those, they try and catch them within the month after, so it's still pretty fresh in their brains. That helps a lot.
Great questions, everyone. Thank you very, very
Yes,
much.
much. Well, just as a quick wrap too, I want to thank Melissa, our Director of Client Success, for joining me. We haven't done a webinar in a while, so shame on us,
Yeah.
but thanks for pulling this together with me. Our contact information, again, it's on screen here. Did put up a quick little, before we jump off here, shout out to our Avid Award winners and our Avid Service Award winners as well. So the top performing builders, top performing employees across the US and Canada. These are really the leaders when it comes to delivering a great customer experience for today's consumers. And that's not always an easy task with consumers today. So, again, check out our website for this year's winners. Congrats to each and every one of the winners. I want to thank everybody for attending the webinar, staying on a little bit longer. And I'll leave off with the jump to my mind when I was, just before I jumped in here. This camping analogy is like, if you think that thing, you're too small to make an impact, trying to go to bed with a mosquito in your tent will teach you differently. I was camping last weekend, and that really resonated when I thought about it. So I will leave off with that. We will quit the recording in a second here, but I hope everyone has a great week, and feel free to reach out to any of our team if you have any further questions. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.